ANC presidential hopeful there, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, dismissing as dishonest attempts to attach another Zuma tag to her name, speaking exclusively to ANN7. My name is Audrey Chimanda. Welcome back to ANN7 Prime. We will be discussing this issue. I have a panel of guests with me in studio. Jackie Shandu, political analyst. Mr. Thabo Motle, ANC Youth Legacy member, is also in studio. Kim Heller is here, political analyst. Papano Pasha also is here, political analyst. And Mr. Lucky Matebula is a political analyst. They're here. You're at home, are welcome to join the conversation. By now you should know our Twitter handle at ANN7 TV. We'll get straight to it. Guys, welcome to ANN7. Thank you for joining us. We have a short, limited time, but I just want everyone to jump in. It's going to be a conversation if anyone feels the need to say anything. I'll start with you, Kim. NDZ is being very consistent with her message and speaking about the need to transform the economy, transform South Africa. Do you think she's earned her mettle? You know, she spoke about how this tag, this name Zuma, what's in a name? I mean, she's gone through the credentials of the work she's done in government from when she went to the AU, and, you know, she had quite a position there.
Thank you. I've been quite fascinated by the conduct and behavior of her critics and detractors, and how ruthless their campaign has been. And in some ways, it reminds me of a wild pack of dogs who are trying to disorientate and dislodge their prey. But she's very steadfast, and I think that came across very strongly tonight. She's steadfast in her opinion. She's very solid. She's been very consistent, as you've said. And I think she spoke with a dignity and decorum tonight that one would want in a future presidential candidate. I think she also spoke with a sincerity that one can't spin or manufacture. And some of the contents of her speech tonight must terrify those who are bolstering white monopoly capital, and for those who have found splendor and privilege and power in the after party of plenty, which has not left us. Yeah. It's still in existence. And I think the attempts to diminish her or see her as a somebody other, as an ex-wife of somebody, or as not as a substantial woman in her own right, is very disingenuous, because she has all the qualifications. And I learned something tonight from the interview, which I didn't know before, that she was a student leader in her own right. Yeah. And with the student issues on the horizon, I think that's an extremely positive sign.
Mr. Matebula, just from the interview, the issue of empowering those who have been, you know, disadvantaged in the past. She spoke of the BEE. She speaks of radical economic transformation and how this resolution was made in Mangaung, but also the question of it not really translating to black industrialists, which I think, you know, was the drive to this resolution not having happened. How do we know radical economic transformation is not going to become an issue of thieving, like what the Johan Ruperts have called it?
Look, I would choose not to talk to the thieving classification of that. But what she spoke about, which was interesting, is that she elevated the importance of agriculture as a primary economy. Because what has been happening, most economic policies have not foregrounded agriculture as a primary economy. If you look at big economies that have industrialized, like China and whatever, China mechanized to support its primary economy, which is the agriculture. So she spoke about her driving, her safaris, and seeing land that is fallow and everything. We hope that is a sign of good things to come from ANC leaders. We hope other candidates would also speak on that. But she also spoke about the skills revolution, to say that there's a dilemma of youth skills and the opportunities that are in this country. We should not believe that this country does not have opportunities. Opportunities are there, but those opportunities cannot be accessed by youth because they don't have the requisite skills. And even if they have the requisite skills, they don't have the social capital to participate in an economy that has a differently defined social capital. So because of that, we have seen her coming out and talking about the actual structure of the economy. I had been listening to her. She spoke of a number of things, But what I've missed in what she said, because I also have to say what I've missed.
Of course.
I've missed her dealing with the issues of the statistics that underline the skills. You know, the truth of the matter is that the NDP in 2030 might not, actually I want to submit that it will not meet its targets, because its targets are assuming that we have a sufficient army of maths and science, teachers of maths and science capacity in the country. And if you look at the maths and science capacity of teachers, just to get the number of teachers to be there will be in 2026, because we have closed colleges and everything. I wished she could also speak to...
Have touched on that a bit. I mean, she spoke of the transformation of the curriculum to translate itself to suit the job market. Jackie, I want to come to you. Your thoughts on NDZ's policies that she outlined as Sifiso spoke to her. Do you think they speak to the policies of the ANC and the kind of leader that they would want to see?
Good evening, Audrey, and to the viewers of ANN7. What a breath of fresh air from the Congress bloc in a very long time. The analysis, the diagnosis of the South African problem post-1994 is spot on, as articulated by Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. And if that alone was the basis on which the ANC will elect its leader in the forthcoming Congress, trust me, there is no doubt that she would go there and become president uncontested. She speaks of inequality, which is by far the main source of the problems we face, because inequality results in unemployment. Inequality results in poverty. More often than not, we hear people go on about the triple Ps and so on and so forth. You have an economy in this country that operates at probably 50% of its capacity, largely because you have the masses of unemployed black people who are kept outside the structure of the mainstream economy, deliberately so. Now, she speaks of BEE as a failure, which is correct, because it lacked the attention to focus on creating black industrialists. And in simple terms, that simply means a development strategy underpinned by a very clear, articulated industrial expansion program. That's how you create jobs, right? We sponsor jobs in North America and Western Europe through this continuation of exporting raw minerals. And when those minerals land in Paris or in London, they go to factories where other people are employed to process our own products, and jobs are kept there. She speaks about the fisheries, the ocean economy. I mean, you just have to look at how, particularly in the Western Cape, our colored people are harassed every day, the small-scale fishermen. I'm surprised this administration even opened a small business department, yet it fails to shift focus away, especially from the part of the state, doing more business with small and medium micro enterprises. So I think she touches on all the critical issues that need to be spoken about. You can't speak of development today and radical economic transformation in South Africa in particular if you don't underpin a clearly well-planned, massive, state-led and protected industrial expansion program.
Yeah, let's hear what Papano has to say. Papano, welcome to the conversation. Dlamini-Zuma, they're being very emphatic about radical economic transformation, saying she does not fear monopolies. We do know that certain banks have already come out with anti-NDZ reports. I'm sure you've read some of those. Why do you think there is such fear among big business when it comes to Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma?
Well, thank you so much, Audrey. Let me just agree with my panelist here. What a breath of fresh air. I think today, if you are black, if you are landless, you must surely have hope, because Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma spoke to the issues that every South African would aspire for. The reality is that big business today does not have the interest of the black majority. And Nkosazana is a threat because she speaks to the real issues that South Africans continuously speak about. I mean, let me just confess that today, since 1994, we have a leader who can articulate all the aspirations of black people. I mean, I can take you as far back as President Nelson Mandela, President Thabo Mbeki, and Jacob Zuma. And I can surely say today that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is not only an academic, but an ideologue who does not only speak of theory, but is able to practicalize all these issues. So I think that as South Africans, we must be, inspired, especially the majority of the poor who sit in poverty, who sit in degradation and squalor. Look, as I indicated, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is a threat to big business, because big business is in the business of profit, and profit in its nature, it exploits, it deprives the majority. So here you have a leader who's saying that, why can't we share? Because remember, if you look at the Freedom Charter, which is supposed to be the underpinning guideline of the ANC, it says that we should share in the wealth of the country. And that's what Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma is speaking about. She is saying that you can't have a situation where a minority have access to the wealth of the country. It's not sustainable. And I think as well-meaning South Africans, we must be able to support such a leader, because she's saying that South Africans, it is time that we stand up. It is time that we take a collective decision to correct the injustice of the past, but more importantly, that we start to redress what has happened, because we cannot continue with a situation where a minority, they have control of the wealth of the country. When you look at the economy as it is, it has not changed. It is a few who are in charge. But lastly, if I might say this, when you look at the business community, I think, again, well-meaning South Africans, they must be able to say enough is enough.
Yeah, because she speaks of a possibility of a revolt if inequality issues are not addressed. Thabo, just listening to NDZ's interview there, do you think she managed to address some of the issues that her supporters are looking to have sorted out?
Yeah, thank you and good evening to viewers. I think she touched on almost all the issues that are key, that the society, that are societal challenges. However, she did not go deeper on the education question, because we have called for a free quality education in tertiary level. She sticked on emphasizing the issue that the system itself does not produce what necessarily might be required by the economy. The system itself produces job seekers as opposed to people who can be able to create those jobs at the end. I think she was spot on there. But where she lacked is that I expected her to emphasize more on free quality education, right, and the decolonization of the system. Secondly, she spoke about the land issue, but what we are pushing as the ANC Youth League, which she did not speak, is that come the December conference, it must be adopted as a policy position that government must then implement, that we do not want to see anybody at entry level, any job entry level requiring experience from anybody. So we want leaders who are going to scrap that in government.
Right.
Yes. And the land question is still a critical question. Of course, I agree with her that you don't wake up and just do it, but it must happen. And because at the center of the economy, whether you like it or not, she spoke about agriculture. At the center of agriculture is the land.
True.
Now, if we do not address the land question, therefore, we will not be able to achieve this radical economic transformation as we envisage.
Yeah. I just want to go back, Kim. Yes, Mr. Patriotism.
But what we should also know is that she's a leader of the ANC. And there are policies of the ANC that she would also champion. And she has made it clear there that if she's elected, she's going to implement the policies of the ANC. And she actually was very emphatic to say that if this is adopted, which means that she's saying that my mandate to lead the ANC is dependent on the resolutions of the conference of the ANC.
Of course.
So if the ANC has not taken a resolution on, has not been emphatic on no fee education, you cannot expect a leader as seasoned as her to say that is going to happen. On land, you saw how she was not necessarily cagey, but she was very controlled to say it has to be a legal process. Now, we're talking here of a leader that is preparing herself to move into an organization that has rules and regulations, that gives you a mandate, and you stick into that mandate.
Yeah.
Hence the policy conference of the ANC. If you saw how the policy conference of the ANC was handled, those policies that were a threat to radical economic transformation, those were the commissions that were almost disrupted because proper policies and recommendations for resolutions could not be allowed to come out. If you remember the radical economic transformation debate, there was an attempt to even claim that no commission spoke about it.
Right.
But Nkosazana today says to ANC people, I don't know what other leaders are going to say. She says to them that if adopted, this will happen. If adopted, this will happen. And that shows a discipline. But let's not forget what she said. She continued to say, the unique person that I am, the unique person that I am. And I think today, for me, she has succeeded to clarify that whilst I carry a Zuma surname, I remain unique. I can imagine all women in this world, if they are going to be charged on the character of their husbands, how happy will they be?
Or ex-spouse, for
or
that matter.
ex-spouses.
Yeah.
I think that's, for me, that's
that would be rather unfortunate.
that's what she came out very strong about.
Say, I'm my own person.
I'm my own person.
Yes.
On that point, I think it's quite unfair for anybody to judge her on the basis of the surname she carries. Because in the ANC, we join voluntarily. We've got many deployees of the ANC with the same similar surname or married. Your Enji Mutsecha and the Mutsecha himself. They are in parliament, all of them. They are a couple. In Limpopo, we've got the Machochas, Joy Matsocha and Matsocha. In Free State, we've got Meman Tombela and Ntombela, both in being activists of the ANC. Therefore, for you to take responsibility in the ANC, it is not a prerequisite that that you must have a particular surname or a surname should disadvantage you. It is on the basis of your track record in the movement that you can ascend to any position of leadership.
People should judge you.
Yes.
Yeah, Jackie, I just want to come to you. I couldn't help but notice Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma saying she is ready to work with the losing comrades. She seems quite certain of a win in December.
No, of course. I mean, she is reading the developing contradictions in the country since the advent of this democracy seemingly very accurately. She understands seemingly more than anyone inside the ANC today that the only thing that can guarantee the ANC returning to power in 2019 is the adoption of the radical economic transformation as policy of the ANC in December, which will be implemented or implementable as soon as the beginning of January next year. That is the only thing. It's not business as usual. And so you get the sense that you have a leader here who has her ear on the ground. She also said that she travels around rural areas. And that is also encouraging because those are some of the people who bear the brunt for this colonial economy that we maintain in this country. But they are not visible because it is not in the interest of white corporate media to give those people a voice. They have been just dumped in the rural areas. They do the most degrading work for white farmers. Sometimes they they lose their lives, many times they get raped and so on and so forth. So it is very refreshing again to hear from a would-be president of the ANC saying, it can't be that she emerges into this coming December and then she loses the argument about the immediate adoption and implementation of the radical economic transformation. If that happens, let me assure you, what happened in Tshwane and Joburg with the metros in the last election will happen on an even bigger scale come 2019. Black people, as Bigo would say, are tired of sitting on the sidelines in this economy and watch the white minority, now joined by this small section of so-called black diamonds, having their best lives when 30 million black people have just been declared hungry and poor not so long ago. So
and it brings me to my next point, Jackie. She says, the status quo is not an option. Something needs to change, Kim. She actually says, she took on your and Rupert's comments about, I know Mr. Matibula respectfully declined to speak on this when it comes to radical economic transformation being another term for theft, also saying that, people who are quite happy to see the majority live in squalor cannot make such comments. What is your comment with regards to that? How she took it on?
Completely, and I think that shows her boldness. She has a proven track record in dealing firmly with white monopoly capital, and I think she's just done that tonight as well. What I really liked about tonight's speech or interview was that the key message was one of patriotism, and that true patriotism in this country is about shifting the status quo, which is one of poverty and inequality, and that every South African who is committed and patriotic should get behind that. And she speaks radically about how to transform the economy and the ownership patterns so that we have a different reality moving forward. I do think, however, that she spoke without enough depth and conviction on the question of land.
Right.
And I would like to see in the next few weeks a clearer position emerge on that.
And another issue, Papano, perhaps you could join in on this, the issue of COSATU and the SACP. How do you foresee the alliance unity playing out if indeed NDZ wins in December?
Quite interesting that you asked that question, because the ANC, one would assume, is independent to COSATU or the SACP. If members of the alliance are indeed principled, one would not think that if any leader were to emerge, there would be any disparity. But you see, if you listened succinctly to Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, I think any member or any leader of both COSATU and the SACP would be inspired. I think if you are working class in South Africa today and you listen to the issues that she raised, you would be able to say that this is the type of leader that I would be able to vote for. The issue of land, the issue of the patterns of ownership of the economy, the issue of the skills revolution, the issue of unemployment and unemployability. But more importantly, and perhaps just to speak to what Thabo was addressing in terms of industrializing the economy, if you have followed Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, one of the key issues that she continues to raise is the one which speaks to decolonizing the curriculum of South Africa. Because the reality is that even if you were to grow the economy, even if there were to be more employment opportunities, if you don't change the curricula, South Africa would continue to produce a black majority which is not able to analyze its objective reality. I mean, if you look at South Africa today, the middle class, which has mainly benefited from the policies of the ANC, is the one which is reactive, mainly because curricula in South Africa today is produced by